Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, President Park Geun-hye is widely expected to name a new Prime Minister nominee sometime today. The president wants to breathe new life into her reform plans following last week's local elections. With April's Sewol-ho ferry disaster still affecting the nation, the government is considering whether to lower its economic growth outlook for this year. Plus, gunmen attacked Karachi airport in southern Pakistan. At least 5 people have been killed. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, June 9th. Here in Seoul, I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, with last week's local elections done and dusted, President Park Geun-hye is expected to push ahead with her much-anticipated reshuffle of the cabinet and her presidential office aides. A new Prime Minister nominee will likely be named today as well. Kim Min-ji starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye will likely announce her pick to fill the vacant Prime Minister's seat as early as this Monday. With the local elections out of the way, the president is expected to speed up the cabinet reshuffle in response to the government's lax handling of April's ferry disaster. Sources say President Park has been searching for a candidate with an innovative mind and deep ethical integrity. This comes after a previous Prime Minister nominee Ahn Dai-hee withdrew last month amid criticism over the amount of money he earned in the private sector after retiring as a Supreme Court justice.
국가 개혁의 적임자로 국민들께서 요구하고 있는 분을 찾고 있습니다.
The president has been mulling over potential candidates as she seeks to press ahead with her reform agenda. Candidates under consideration include Kim Myung-nan, former head of the Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission, as well as Cho Moo-jae, a former Supreme Court justice. With the ruling Saenuri party failing to grab winning tickets from the Chungcheongdo provinces at the local elections, candidates from these provinces are also being considered. A reshuffle is also imminent at the presidential office. President Park on Sunday tapped Yoon Do-hyun as the new presidential press secretary after a close aide stepped down from the post. Yoon, head of YTN Plus, a digital contents provider, was noted for his balanced way of thinking and keen analytical skills as a journalist.
Yoon was appointed as he's the right person to explain government reform policies to the public and receive their understanding and cooperation.
A review process is also underway for other presidential aides to be replaced. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now to some very sad news. Another Korean survivor of Japan's military sexual slavery has passed away. Bae Chun-hee died at the age of 91, according to the House of Sharing. And this was on Sunday. The group runs a shelter for women who were forced into sexual slavery for Japanese troops during World War II. Bae's death leaves only 54 surviving victims in the country now. Initially, there were 237 women on the list of government-registered former sex slaves. Historians estimate that up to 200,000 comfort women, mostly from Korea and China, were forced into sexual slavery during the war. Korea has been demanding Tokyo apologize to and compensate the victims. Japan, however, says the issue was resolved through a 1965 treaty that normalized bilateral ties between the two countries. Now, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is speeding up efforts to get cabinet approval on the issue of collective self-defense, which is the reinterpretation of the constitution that will allow Japan to militarily assist allies that come under attack. Japanese daily Asahi Shimbun reported Sunday that Abe has reportedly instructed senior officials to prepare for cabinet approval before the session ends on June 22nd. Following his orders, a senior ruling Liberal Democratic Party leader asked government officials to prepare a draft of the constitutional reinterpretation. Abe has also ordered his Liberal Democratic Party to quickly reach an agreement with New Komeito, its ruling coalition partner, which has been at odds with Abe over his push to revamp the country's defense policy. Staying with Japan, and Tokyo has presented North Korea with a list of roughly 470 Japanese nationals it believes were abducted by Pyongyang decades ago. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga says the list had been sent to North Korea through a diplomatic channel. The move is part of a recent agreement under which Pyongyang will reinvestigate the whereabouts of missing Japanese nationals in exchange for sanctions relief. Suga said Tokyo will send officials to North Korea after the reinvestigation to verify the results. He added Tokyo would continue intergovernmental talks with Pyongyang on the abduction issue, even if North Korea carries out further nuclear or missile tests. Now, in rather controversial statements, really, a researcher in the United States is calling on South Korea, the US and China to engage in trilateral talks on reunifying the two Koreas. Our Kim Hyun-bin has this report.
Sumi Terry, a senior researcher with the Weatherhead East Asian Institute at Columbia University, says that South Korea, the US, and China need to engage in active discussion on the future of reunified Korea. Terry, a former director of Korea, Japan, and Oceanic Affairs at the National Security Council, made the remarks at a congressional hearing last week. Terry said that in order to change China's policy on North Korea, Seoul and Washington need to convince Beijing that Korean reunification will be beneficial for the country. She added that the U.S. needs to promise not to dispatch its troops north of the border after reunification is achieved. She also went as far as to say that the U.S. should consider pulling its troops out of Korea entirely to win Beijing's support, saying that this would ease China's security concerns and could encourage Beijing to put more pressure on North Korea. She said the move would not be a diplomatic policy failure for Washington, as U.S. troops were first stationed on the peninsula to defend South Korea after the Korean War. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, another 2 bodies have been pulled from the sunken Seoul-ho ferry more than 50 days after the disaster that killed nearly 300 people in April. The government's disaster response headquarters say divers found the body of a female in the 3rd floor cafeteria of the vessel on Sunday morning. The body of a male was found Sunday night on the 4th floor of the ship. Rescue personnel have been searching those areas based on testimony given by crew members during the ongoing investigation into the disaster. These discoveries bring the number of missing passengers down to 12 and the confirmed death toll to 292.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
And staying on the ferry disaster, but talking about its toll on the economy, because it really is denting domestic demand, and this is prompting the government to consider lowering its growth outlook for this year. Our Connie Kim has this report.
With April's deadly ferry disaster affecting the whole nation, the government is reviewing whether to adjust the economic growth outlook for this year. The Finance Ministry said Sunday that it's assessing economic activity in the first half of the year as it reviews its predictions for the latter half. The ministry is planning to release its economic policy direction for the second half of the year later this month. The ministry says that its policies will focus on supporting the service sector and small businesses in light of the Seoul ferry disaster. Now, the ministry's plans are expected to include tax breaks and employment subsidies, though the amount of support has not yet been determined. The ministry says the measures will be geared toward boosting domestic demand and improving people's livelihoods. The government last year predicted a growth rate of 3.9% for this year. However, a state-run research institute says it is highly unlikely the government can achieve that due to sluggish domestic consumption. Last month, the Korea Development Institute, a government think tank, lowered its growth forecast to 3.7%. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Staying with economic news, and latest reports show business investment in Korea rose in the first 3 months of this year. This mainly due to increased spending by a number of the nation's top conglomerates. According to Corporate Watcher CEO score on Sunday, Korea's top 30 conglomerates invested about $20 billion in the first quarter. That's nearly 9% higher than the same period last year. But if we put aside Korea's biggest business group, Samsung, which boosted its investment by 48%, the rest invested about 4% less than they did in the first quarter of 2013. Korean mobile messaging service Line has reached another milestone, 450 million registered users, and it's aiming for more by the year's end. The subsidiary of the Korean search engine giant Naver says it attracted 30 million users in May alone. Line currently has 24 million users in Thailand, 20 million in Taiwan, and 20 million more in Indonesia. Globally, it has 15 million users in Spain, 10 million in Mexico, and a staggering 50 million in Japan. Line has set a year-end goal of 500 million users, and there are rumors the company is reviewing an IPO with a dual US and Japanese listing. The estimated valuation is in the range of $10 billion. Facebook paid $19 billion for WhatsApp, a service similar to Line. Very exciting week is about to start for sports fans as the World Cup kicks off in Brazil in just a few days' time now. And Koreans are extremely well known around the world for their extremely feverish support of their team. Although everything is ready for people to enjoy the games here in Korea, festivities are likely to be toned down this year in the wake of the tragic Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Our Paulie has this report.
Here in the capital, Seoul, many sports retailers are unusually quiet despite the World Cup being just around the corner. Large advertisement banners and over-the-top promotional events have been absent from storefronts. It's part of a conscious choice by many football fans and businesses to tone down celebrations as the country continues to deal with the shock and grief from April's Sewol-ho ferry sinking.
The atmosphere was really great during the World Cup 4 years ago. But even with a few days left with the World Cup, there's no atmosphere of excitement. Many people don't feel like it's the World Cup.
Official corporate sponsors of the upcoming World Cup are also adjusting their marketing campaigns in Korea to reflect public sentiment. For example, many are using televised ads with gentler music and subdued visuals.
Given the recent national sentiment, we're proceeding with a calmer tone. Our TV advertisements are colorful and have a lively atmosphere. However, we're moving forward with a message that has a softer mood.
Major department store chains are also taking a different approach, with World Cup-themed fashion shows and cartoon exhibitions featuring famous South American artists.
As you know, there are many people who are suffering from the Sewol-ho disaster. Through this exhibition, we want to give people a chance to heal and support each other.
The opening match for the World Cup will kick off on June 12, while Korea will face off against Russia in their first match on June 17. But unlike in past years, the official supporters group, the Red Devils, won't be launching large-scale rallies through the streets of Seoul. Nonetheless, millions of fans at home and abroad will be cheering on the Korean men's national team, albeit with a heavy heart. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Now, installing solar panels can make your home more energy efficient, obviously, but the setup costs make it unaffordable for many homeowners. Local companies, though, have come up with an easier way to lease out this equipment, even to those who cannot afford the very hefty initial investment. Our Son Jong-in has this report.
From the bright lights in the living room to the air conditioner and TV, all these home appliances are running on energy provided from a solar panel on the roof of the house. But the installation doesn't come cheap, with an average cost of $7,000 to $8,000. In order to lessen the burden for homeowners, solar companies came up with so-called solar panel rental program. Under the lease agreement, they can borrow the equipment for under $70 a month.
Last summer, we ran the air conditioner all season, and the monthly electricity bill came to around $1,000. But after we installed the solar panel, we are now paying just 1/5 of the usual bill.
The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says homeowners that pay on average $100 for electricity a month can save up to $15 every month, even after paying the rental and electricity fees.
If you sign up for the sunlight panel rental service, we set the facility up for free. The rental period covers the costs of any repairs and maintenance, so you can save more money.
Only non-apartment building houses that are well insulated and are not facing the south are currently eligible for the service. The government plans to promote ways for the 1.5 million houses qualified to benefit from the lease program so they can save both the planet and money. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following this morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, who is standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning to you, Mark. We'll begin with some breaking news. Pakistan's international airport in Karachi is under lockdown as it came under gunman fire, killing at least 5 security guards, according to reports. Local media say between 4 and 10 gunmen accessed Jinnah International Airport about 2 hours ago, midnight local time, through one of its old terminals. It also reports all flights out of Pakistan's largest airport have been suspended as staff are being evacuated. Islamic militants are being suspected to be behind this attack as Pakistan has been waging war against a homegrown insurgency for more than a decade now. We will bring you more updates as they come in throughout the morning. And local media in Thailand are reporting key red shirt activists have agreed to talks with the interim military government, marking progress in the first of the junta's 3-stage plan for reconciliation. Meanwhile, the National Council for Peace and Order has lifted curfews at 4 additional tourist destinations in an apparent move to reboot tourism in Thailand. That's Cha'am, Hua Hin, Krabi, and Phang Nga, sites popular for their beaches. This follows last week's curfew removals in the resort cities of Pattaya, Samui, and Phuket. Bangkok and Chiang Mai, meanwhile, remain under orders to close down between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m., as is the case in non-tourism-related provinces. Egyptian President-elect Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was sworn into office on Sunday after winning 96% of the votes cast in last month's elections. The former military chief vowed to bring security to the country as he leads Egypt through important changes and, quote, correct the mistakes of the past. He also called for unity and hard work from the people, adding that there would be no reconciliation with those who fought against the Cairo government, a comment seen to be directed at the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters. Finally, in the U.S., former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has said she will make a decision on a potential 2016 presidential bid by the end of the year. She said she likely won't make it public until next year, as she would be mulling over the prospect until then. She made the statement during an interview with U.S. broadcaster ABC News, during which she also pitched her new book, Hard Choices, to be published on Tuesday. The popular former First Lady leads in polls for possible Democratic candidates in the 2016 presidential election.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA with the Manulife Financial LPGA Classic. And just a week after losing our #1 ranking, South Korea's Park Geun-hye comes back to her old self and gets closer to taking her top ranking once again. Now, despite a decent first round of the event, shooting a 69, Park Geun-hye improves every day until she ends up shooting an amazing 61 on the final day to pass everyone and finish with their first LPGA title of the season at 23 under par overall. With their putting game improving a lot since missing cut not too long ago, she was able to come back and claim the Manulife Financial LPGA Classic. Meanwhile, world number 1 Stacey Lewis finished tied for 6th at 15 under par overall. And now moving over to the South Korean national team, with the team currently training for the upcoming tune-up match against Ghana, former national team head coach Gus Hiddink had something to say about the upcoming World Cup, and it wasn't all that motivating. According to the legendary head coach who once led the South Korean national team to their 4th place finish back in 2002, he believes it's too bad that Korea had to be grouped into Group H with Belgium and Russia. Hiddink believes that both nations are tough teams to beat and should do very well in the World Cup. Meanwhile, Belgium, Russia, and Algeria have yet to lose in their tune-up matches, including Belgium, who defeated Tunisia 1-0 over the weekend. And now moving over to the KBO, where the LG Twins crushed the Kia Tigers 20-3 on Sunday, with the Lotte Giants shutting out the SK Wyverns 3-0 and the Tucson Bears end their 6-game losing streak with a 6-run 9th inning, beating the Nexen Heroes 11-9. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the highlights between Samsung Lions and the Hanwha Eagles. Of course, going into the game here, we go over to the 2nd inning. Kim Hung-gonir bunts one to 3rd, but an error scores Park Sung-min from 3rd, and it's 1-0. Next batter, Lee Ji-young, this time an RBI single to left field, and it's now 2-0. Next play, bases loaded for Navarro, and he draws the walk here, and it's 3-0. Still bases loaded, Park Han-hee is going to ground one to a double play, but Lee Ji-young scores, and it's now 4-0. Shifting to the 5th inning, Kim Tae-gyun with the man on, and there it goes. Deep to right field, gone a 2-run shot, and it's 4-2. Meanwhile, the Samsung Lions continue to swing away, scoring 3 runs in the 7th inning as they hang on to win this game 7-2. And now moving over to Game 2 of the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, where despite being down 4-2 in the 3rd quarter, the LA Kings come back to score twice in the 3rd to tie the game 4-4 before Dustin Brown scored in the 2nd overtime to beat the New York Rangers 5-4. Now with the win, the Kings now have a 2-0 series lead over the Rangers. Meanwhile, we're going to finish things off at the French Open, where Maria Sharapova was able to beat Simona Halep in 3 sets to claim her 2nd French Open title and her 5th Grand Slam title in an emotional victory. Meanwhile, Rafael Nadal proved to be the king of clay courts as he defeated Novak Djokovic in 4 sets, claiming his 9th French Open title and his 14th Grand Slam title overall. And with that, that's going to do it for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, it was cool and breezy yesterday with daily highs reaching into mid-20s, but it will get hotter again today. Temperatures reaching into mid to upper 20s across the most regions. While mostly to partly cloudy skies are here to kick off the day, and outbreaks of rain is expected in some of the regions in Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do during the day. In fact, we're expecting on and off rain throughout the the week, so it will be a good idea to have a small umbrella with you this week. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low in most areas are starting out at 18, then behind the capital in Gwangju will rise to 29, while Daegu tops out at 27 and Busan should climb to 24 later on. Well, let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju should see a high of 24. Daejeon and Dokdo will reach 29 and 19 respectively, while Mount Keungang tops out at 15. Well, that's all for now. Have a wonderful day, and I'll be back with more updates after 10.
Thank you very much, Jion, for the weather there. And those are stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in about 30 minutes' time, and we'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.